With the Y2K Millennium Bug scare firmly behind us, the world could start looking forward to, well, being glad that it didn't end, for one thing. But aside from that, video games, and the lineup for 2001 was something to truly get excited about. Nintendo served up the GameCube and its launch title Luigi's Mansion. The Dreamcast's Phantasy Star Online reportedly gained over 300,000 worldwide users by mid-year, and critically acclaimed titles such as Grand Theft Auto 3, Devil May Cry, Final Fantasy X, and Silent Hill 2 firmly lodged themselves in the hearts of gamers for all time. But it wasn't all sunshine, rainbows, and super monkey balls, and we are once again shining a light on the absolute worst that one full year had to offer. Although titles with fewer than 7 reviews were omitted, a mere glance into the darkened pits of Metacritic has revealed to us a veritable buffet of tripe that we've all seemingly erased from our collective gaming memory. Allow me to remind you of why you forgot them in the first place. For better or worse, I'm Ben from TripleJump, and here are the 10 worst games of 2001. Number 10. Driven. PlayStation 2, 38%. It's safe to say that games based on movies tend to fall short.
I don't want to kill anymore. Yeah, I don't want to kill anymore. I didn't do anything.
Very few of them end up being worthy of the movies they're parasitizing, let alone gaming experiences worthy of your time. And since it's on this list, you can probably guess that this one is no exception. Based on the Sylvester Stallone film of the same name, Driven promised players cinematic action and high-octane racing, but struggled to keep pace with the likes of Gran Turismo 3, A-Spec, or even Mario Kart Super Circuit for the Game Boy Advance, which both released in the same year. Granted, there are a few nifty gaming modes, with one letting you race as a team with a blocker and a leader crisscrossing the tracks, but the entire package is far from worth digging through in order to find a few glimmers of potential. In fact, I suppose you might say, instead of making players feel thrilled by the high-speed, high-stakes action, they were simply driven to turn off their consoles. That's right, we're firing on all cylinders today! Number 9. NFL Blitz 2002. Game Boy Advance, 37%. Oh yeah, here we go, sports time! I've played an American football game before. Suck it, Donovan McNabb! But nothing quite as bad as this, so I'm gonna give this review all the negativity I've got. It's not as if other outlets held back on their scathing reviews either. When dredging up ye oldie scraps of information on this game, the standout comments seem to involve words like mediocre, bare bones, and putrid. Anyway, NFL Blitz 2002 was deemed to be not only an uninspiring representation of American football, but also a ghastly installment of the NFL Blitz series itself. After all, the franchise began as an arcade game that chose to forego a realistic portrayal of the sport in favour of something far more exaggerated. Tonally, think of the NBA Jam games that Midway also produced and you won't be too far off. In the end, it just didn't capture the same type of crazy adrenaline that the series was once known for, and unsurprisingly, this didn't sit well with fans, leaving them feeling rather insert football analogy here. Got 'em. Number 8. Jeremy McGrath's Supercross World. PlayStation 2, 35%. Using the word super in the title of this game just seems disingenuous. Honestly, it barely reaches the level of forgettable and tends to sit at mind-numbingly boring. The majority of critics regarded this title as a miserable failure that somehow even made the character selection screen seem dull as dishwater. It didn't play well, and it certainly didn't look good either. The environments were drab, with flat textures rolling out before you, masquerading as terrain. Needless to say, this one just isn't fun. It has a poor sense of speed, atrocious handling, and generally shoddy response times. It's basic, and does very little to encourage the player to actually, want to play the damn thing. Its crimes against entertainment were so egregious that it was the runner-up for GameSpot's 2001 Worst Game Award, barely losing out to the gloriously awful Kabuki Warriors for Xbox, and stay tuned for that one, it's a doozy. In 2002, the GameCube version fared even worse than its predecessor by not only receiving drastically unfavourable reviews, but also nabbing that shameful GameSpot award that it had lost out on in the previous year, so congratulations. Number 7. Jekyll and Hyde. PC, 34%. 2001's Jekyll and Hyde will definitely send shivers down your spine. Hell, you may even cry out in horror upon firing it up on your PC, just not for the intended reasons. It's weird for the sake of being weird, lacking the tone and atmosphere that such a tale should conjure. And yet, while the sound design was praised at the time, any positivity was abruptly overshadowed by bad controls, muddy graphics, insane camera angles, and almost non-existent character animation. To be fair, there are a few positive reviews knocking about, but they appear to be from players who seem to have gotten some nostalgia stuck in their eye when recalling this disappointing homage to Robert Louis Stevenson's work. And that's a real shame, because the plot did have potential. In this odd retelling, Dr. Jekyll must reactivate his laboratory equipment and bring back his dreaded alter ego Mr. Hyde in order to save his kidnapped daughter. Imagine the struggle, the intrinsic duality of self that could have manifested in the gameplay, visuals and audio design. But alas, to paraphrase Stevenson, all video games as we meet them are commingled out of good and evil, and this game alone in the ranks of mankind was pure drivel. Number 6. Mortal Kombat Advance. Game Boy Advance, 33%. Critics were fast to gather their pitchforks and torches for this one, and for good reason. It's bad, like really bad. Most notably, players took issue with the insanely frustrating difficulty level that skyrocketed during the first bloody match. Many reviews cited the default setting as near impossible to play, with the AI difficulties pulling off combinations that no human player could ever achieve, even if they did have Goro's extra digits. Yes, you could crank down the difficulty level a little bit, but that only served in dumbing down the enemy to the point that you could simply prop them up against a wall and decimate their HP by spamming the A or B button. Adding insult to injury, if you manage to scrape through a match or two, you probably won't feel elated with the triumphant sense of combative victory. You'll just have a headache from the muddy graphics. It undoubtedly felt like a rush job, and this didn't go unnoticed by critics or die-hard MK fans. Few were surprised when GameSpot named it as the worst Game Boy Advance game of the entire year. Not quite the flawless victory that developer VirtuaCraft had hoped for. Number 5. Kabuki Warriors. Xbox, 32%. Kabuki Warriors, no, not those ones, was a remarkably atrocious title that somehow reduced the classical and elaborate form of Japanese drama to a snooze fest of bland buffoonery. So hang on to your fluffy red wig thingy, because it's gonna be a tedious and sluggish ride. Oh boy. For those of you who didn't grow up in the early Edo period of Japan, Kabuki theatre performances were known for their ornate costumes, lavish makeup and dramatic performances. However, you wouldn't believe that to be the case if all you had for reference was this abysmal Xbox title. Kabuki Warriors takes blandness to another level, both in regards to design and gameplay. Whilst classic Kabuki performances are a feast for the senses, this poor excuse for a fighting game left hungry gamers rather malnourished and unsatisfied. A prompt exit stage left for this one, if you don't mind. Number 4. The Simpsons Wrestling. PlayStation, 32%. Let's get the positives out of the way, shall we? Firstly, all 20 characters in the game were voiced by the same actors that provided their voices for the television show. Secondly, there is no second positive. The Simpsons Wrestling was widely panned by critics who cited it as a terrible waste of a license. Although the classic Simpsons humour is present in this title, it does very little to save the game from such negative reception. Doug Perry of IGN boldly stated that it was one of the ugliest games he had ever seen, highlighting the choppy graphics and dodgy character models, and Andrew Rayner of Game Informer criticised the sheer lack of actual wrestling, as well as the awful visuals. Instead of, wrestling moves, you have to slap your opponent around the ring by mindlessly smashing the buttons with reckless abandon. And yes, this might be tonally correct for a game about cartoon characters hitting each other, but the joke ages very quickly when it's the fundamental cornerstone of the gameplay. Irrespective of the laughs that some fans may derive from a brief session with this PlayStation title, it will come as no surprise that in our ranking of all the Simpsons video games, this one came dead last. Number 3. Druna Morbus Gravis. PC, 26%. We're on a mission to not get demonetized here, folks, so bear with us. Druna, if I'm even pronouncing that correctly, is an erotic science fiction and comic book character whose adventures are usually a vehicle for hardcore and graphic violence, often featuring uncensored and explicit scenes of... You get the picture, right? I hope so, because I am genuinely not allowed to paint it more vividly than that. Druna Morbus Gravis is an underdeveloped adventure game based on a saucy comic book character that cops out on delivering anything that fans of the comic book would actually turn up for. It's borderline unplayable, cursed with a system that's woefully unbalanced, unresponsive, and unintuitive. Overall, it's nothing short of a disaster. Even though the game takes inspiration from the first volume of Druna's comic book saga, the game regularly adds new plot elements and characters, none of which bring any form of quality or depth to the general experience. Most of these rewrites are probably intended to disguise some of the more mature elements of the source material, but the game still doesn't shy away completely from violence or nudity. And Druna herself isn't as capable as, say, Lara Croft. Not even close. In fact, her usual main form of defense is to turn and run. Unlike the comics, Druna Morbis Gravis simply left everyone feeling frustrated and unfulfilled, basically the same way I feel whenever I'm forced to say the words Druna Morbis Gravis. Number 2. Kiss Pinball. PlayStation, 26%. Oh, heck yeah, rally the Kiss army, it's time for pyrotechnics, smoking guitars, and pinball? Yeah, not exactly rock and rolling all night and partying every day. For some unknown reasons, the gameplay of Kiss Pinball revolved around booping the ball against targets to start Kiss shows, then hitting more targets to complete said shows. It's basically a rhythm pinball game designed to disappoint fans of both rhythm games and pinball. And Kiss, probably. There were only 2 tables to choose from, neither of which deserve discussion beyond that, and don't expect either of them to serve up anything remotely interesting in terms of general variety or gameplay. Oh, and apparently the game is so boring that the camera itself starts to randomly pan away, seemingly in search of the wasted money that players unfortunately spent on the damn thing. As a pinball title, it's just dismal, and it couldn't even garner the favour of die-hard fans of flippers, bumpers and poppers. Those are pinball terms, by the way. Originally, our writer included the term gobble hole, but that just sounded like something redacted from the Druna Morbis Gravis entry. When Peter Criss sang "Me and the Boys Will Be Playing All Night," he was definitely not telling Beth about Kiss Pinball. Number 1. Survivor. PC, 26%. Throw some folks on a remote island, provide them with meager supplies, and inflict as many physical and mental challenges upon their poor souls as humanly possible. Fuel their mistrust of each other. Add a sprinkle of backstabbing, finish with some traumatic breakdowns, and hey presto, you've got the peak of 2000s reality television. Somehow, developer Magic Lantern thought that it would make for a great gaming experience, and here we are talking about the mathematical worst game of 2001. In essence, the gameplay consisted of developing survivors' skills, forming alliances, developing relationships, and eventually voting them off one by one. So, The Sims 2 Castaway, but far less amusing. As some of the more legendary and rightly scathing reviews noted, the gameplay was painfully boring and the pitiful graphics just made matters worse, as players couldn't even enjoy the tropical ambience. Although it was a reasonable representation of the show's overall premise, the core survival elements of the game were insanely tedious. You know, the thing that the show was actually named after? Yeah, that was the worst bit of the game. Well done, lads. To top it all off, the AI was reportedly buggy, the glitches rained down like a tropical monsoon, and the entire thing is about as much fun as watching Tom Hanks remove his own tooth in Castaway. What's more, that's officially the nicest thing any critic has said about it.